All right, guys, this is the day 12 notes for circles. Some of the notes I have in here are already filled in, so feel free to pause the video at any time that you need to so that you can write things down. The equation that we're going to be looking at for today is the equation of how to graph an actual circle. It's going to have the information that you need to be able to graph a circle on a set of x, y axes. So the first way that we look at it is if you have a circle where the center point is at the origin, right at 0, 0. Now, let me show you the general equation first. I'm going to slide this down just a little bit. What the general equation looks like, and what I would suggest after as you're watching the videos, if you're taking notes, this is what you want to write down, is this equation right here. So in parentheses, x minus h squared plus, and then parentheses, y minus k squared, and then equals r squared. Right? What this represents is that hk, that's actually going to be the coordinates of the center point. So whatever point that is, you'll plug that into the equation there. And then the r value, that's going to represent the length of the radius. So those are the three values that you have to plug in to create your equation. So you always keep the x's and the y's and you keep the squareds on there, but you plug in whatever the h, k, and the r is that you have for that particular problem, right? Guys, can you close the door for me, please? All right, that's what happens when you're at home making lessons. All right, so in this case, when you have the circle closed and the center is at the origin, then what you're plugging in for h and k are 0 and 0. And then I'm just going to keep the r as it is. So what I want you to take note of from that is that if I have x minus 0, well, x minus 0 is just x. So what that's going to look like is just plain old x squared. Over here, y minus 0 is going to look like just y squared, and then we'd keep the r squared. Right? So it's not a new equation for you to remember, but what I want you to keep in mind is that if you see x squared plus y squared and you don't see any parentheses or minus whatever else, what it really means is that you have x minus 0. Right? So it's just a little kind of trick that you have to pay attention to. But in the circle, you're going to plot the center point, and then this is the radius from the center to the edge. So once you know what the radius is, you can draw the circle itself. All right, we're going to do a couple practice questions. Each one's a little bit different to kind of show you an example of what's going on here. So let me slide down a smidge so that you can see this better. So this first one, you are given x squared plus y squared equals 16. So you can see that I rewrote underneath it that if I just see x squared, that's really having x minus 0 squared, and then plus y minus 0 squared, and then equals 16, just keeping that part of it. Okay, which part's the center, which part's the radius? Well, this is the hk, or the center, so it's going to be 0, 0. And then you want to remember that that 16 on the end, that represents the radius squared. So I actually want you to create a little equation. I want you to set r squared equal to 16 and then solve for r. So to undo something squared, we would take the square root and then we would get r equals 4. So those are the two pieces of information you need to graph the circle. You need the center point and you need the radius. So how I want you to plot your circle. All right, you're going to do the best that you can here. You're going to plot the center point first at 0, 0, and then I want you to plot 4 more points. Each one of them, in this case, is going to be 4 units away since the radius was 4, but you're going to go up from the center, down, right, and left. All right, so if I go over 1, 2, 3, 4, you can see I've plotted that point there. Up 4 is this point, left 4 gave me that point, and down 4 gave me this last point. So then when you connect the dots, do the best you can. You can see my circle's a little squishy on that side, but do the best you can to create a circle. Try to avoid any sharp corners basically on your circle there. So the one next to it, if we do that one as well, just did it really quick already so that you guys could see it. You have x squared plus y squared equals 31. So again, if I don't see x minus something and y minus something, that means that center point is just 0, 0. And then the radius, I wanted to show you this one on purpose because if the radius isn't a perfect square, it doesn't mean you can't do it. set r squared equal to 31, and then take the square root of both. So on my calculator, I did the square root of 31, and it comes out to be approximately, we know it's not exactly 5.6, but about 5.6. So what that means is to create my circle, I plotted the center point at 0, 0, and then I counted over what I thought was about 5.6. So just kind of eyeball it. So go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and about half. Up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and about half, and so on. Do that to the left and down. Draw your circle. Ta-da! And there you go. All right. On to the next page. Just a slightly different approach. It still starts with the same equation again. So if you have it there, there's the equation. I just wrote it one more time. The y minus h squared, and then plus, x minus h squared, and then plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So center radius, you got it. Okay, let's do this first one here. I'm going to slide on up so you can see it. And now what you're looking at with this first one is it's saying, can you write the equation if we tell you what the center point is and tell you what the radius is? So in this case, the center is the point 4, -2, and then the radius is going to be 7. So what I want you to keep in mind is that you're going to plug in for h, k, and r, but you're going to keep the x and y. So I already set up the equation where I kept the x and y, and now I'm going to plug in these 3 spots. I'm going to plug in h here, k here, and then the r here. All right, so let's do it. So the h is the 4, so I'm just going to put 4 into the first parenthesis. K is -2, so it's going to be minus a -2 here. And then down here, the radius is 7, so it's going to be 7 squared. So x minus h plus y minus k, both parts squared, and then equals r squared. All I want you to do from here is actually just clean up the answer a little bit. So x minus 4 squared, there's nothing you need to do with that. Keep that one as is. If you have minus a negative like you do in this case, make sure to flip that to be plus a positive. And then in the last part, just square the number out. So what that means is we end up with x minus 4 squared plus y plus 2 squared, and then equals 49. There you go. We're going to do one more of these ones together. I've already set it up. So if you need to pause the video at any point, go ahead and just pause it to give yourself that extra moment. Otherwise, with this next one, we've got the center of the circle at the point -5, -1. The radius is radical 13. So that radius is exactly why I wanted to do this one with you. Let's plug in. So you keep the x minus, and we're going to plug in -5 for the h. Keep the y minus, we're going to plug in -1 for the k. And then we're going to have that radical 13 that we plug in here. All right, make sure each part has the squared after the first parenthesis, the second parenthesis, and the radius itself. Right. Now let's think about what will happen. This time, both cases are minus and negative. So this is going to turn into plus a positive, plus a positive. What happens over here? Well, if I square a square root, those are inverses. They're just going to cancel right out. And so what I'm left with is plus signs in both the parentheses, and then just plain old 13 over here. Right? So those two cancel one another out. Now, could you show that differently? Of course you could. You could think about, radical 13 times radical 13, which would give you radical 169, which is equal to 13. And there you go. All right. But either way, just know that if I square a square root, they will cancel, and I'm just left with the number underneath. All right. Let's do 2 examples off of the last page. So I'm going to flip all the way to that last page here. Some of them are done already, so you can see those simultaneously as well. I'm going to do the one next to it. So the trick with this one for number 2 here is if you take a look at it, when it's in this format, what you have to remember is if I go back and look at this last page, is the signs are going to change. And let me explain to you what I mean by that. So with this here, I had the center point +4, -2. but look at how it looks in the equation. It looks like -4 and +2. So the sign of the center is going to look the opposite in the equation. So the key is I have to remember to switch the signs. So when you look at number 2 over here, because I see x plus 4, that means the actual center point is going to be -4, and then it's y minus 3. So the actual coordinate here is then going to be a +3. So write yourself that reminder to switch the signs here and here. All right. The last part, the 36, that's the r squared piece of it. So if r squared equals 36, take the square root, the radius is 6. All right. So you're going to plot the center point first, then you're going to graph the circle by plotting the points 6 units away from that center. So on your graph, go to -4. So there's -4 up 1, 2, 3. All right, there's my center point. And now go to the right 6. Go up 6. Go left 6. And go down 6. Now, something to keep in mind, that point right there was right on the edge. What if it falls off by 1? That's fine. If it falls off by like 10 or 20, you probably calculated the radius wrong. So it should fit pretty well. Maybe it falls off just like a smidge, all right? But if it falls way off the paper, you probably like forgot to take the square root or something like that. So double check that, all right? And do the best you can to draw that circle. Right. Last question we're gonna do together is number 2 at the bottom. And keep in mind, number 1 is done there if you wanna take a quick peek at it. Otherwise, number 2, it's asking us to write the equation of the circle. So you need 2 things. You need the center, you need the radius. All right, just look at your graph. Here's my center point. So it's at 0, 1. So that right there is going to be my h and my k. And then the radius, count from the center to one of the points on the edge. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, let's plug it into the equation. So you keep the x, put in 0 for the h squared, plus keep the y, minus put in 1 for the k squared, and then equals the radius squared. Now, the only reason I wrote it down here is I want to clean it up to write my answer up top. Well, you can leave this as x minus 0, or you could lose the minus 0 and just make it x squared. Either one is fine there. Plus y minus 1 squared, 8 squared, 64. And there you go. All right, guys, I hope that helps. Make sure write down the equation of the circle, write down what the h and the k and the r represent, and then you should be good to go. Have a good one.